Now, let's look at Nigeria's telecom sector. We see operators in Nigeria have lamented the impact of currency devaluation and inflation on their operations, requesting tariffs increase. But let's look at this and 5G adoption so far in Nigeria. Join us for this conversation. We have Oluwole Begunde, is a research director at Insights, joining me right here in the studios. Great to have you.
Thank you for having me, Laddie.
So we see the same issues, at this point. Currency devaluation, inflation, and we've seen operators in Nigeria, that's telecom operators, say, you know what, it's time for us to increase tariffs. And we've also heard from the government saying it's not always about increasing tariffs. We can find other ways, to make this work. Because at the end of the day, we don't know how much the Nigerian consumer can take. We've seen price rises on very sensitive commodities that, on a normal day would, send people, to the streets, and we've seen that happen. So, talk to me about the third quarter. We're expecting, the telecom's contribution to GDP for the third quarter. We're going to have that at some point, but we know Q2 wasn't looking so good. So, how are you seeing, this previous half of the year for the telecom sector?
So it depends on who you're talking to.
Right.
Like you said, the operators have challenges with Forex,
right,
which is impacting how they can invest into the market. Now, that is a big deal because most MTN, for example, and Airtel are global companies and they report their revenue in Forex. So whatever they're making locally has an impact on what they're doing at the group level. Let me give you an example. Q1 2023, MTN Nigeria, between Q1 2023 and 2024 Q1, had a 31% growth in revenue, local currency. Now, at the same period, Q1 2023, Q1 2024, the South African OPCO had a 3% margin growth. But when group results come out, MTN Nigeria's revenue nosedive 52% because of that Forex gap. And that now impacts investment issues about Nigeria and the likes. So that is a problem. Although locally they are doing so well, 31% growth, it's impacting revenues at the group level. What that means is that South Africa has now become the largest contributor for MTN Group in Africa, ahead of Nigeria. Nigeria used to be there for a long, long time, but been leapfrogged down because of the Forex issues. So that is a big problem. And like I said, I predict that if things don't change, the Forex dynamics don't change in favor of the country generally, you will see global companies like MTN start to pull out a bit because nobody wants to put in $1 in the market and withdraw 50 cents. Doesn't make business sense. And what that would happen for the market is that we start to see quality of service declining because they can't really invest what they need to invest in the market to sustain the services that are around in the market now. We're seeing 4G across the country, not just in Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt, all across the cities. 5G also growing. All of that kind of investment will not happen anymore if they don't have the right investments coming in from outside the country.
Because, looking at this FX issue, it seems that is the root of all our problems.
Absolutely.
At this point, looking from, sector to sector, and we know the telecom sector is a very, very sensitive sector.
Yes.
We need that because if we don't have that sector,
there are a whole industry
a lot will be impacted
on telecoms.
Right.
The betting industry, for example, is a billion-dollar industry resting on telecoms. The fintech industry, sitting on telecoms, the banking on telecoms. So that sector needs to be protected. What I reckon will happen will be a meeting between the stakeholders, the telcos, the regulators, the government, consumer protection, to find when tariff can go up. It's not an if.
But the tariffs really have to go up.
They have to go up. Because look at the banking sector, for example, the aviation sector, oil and gas. Everybody has adjusted in a way the Forex prices, except for the telcos who are still being told to pipe things down a little. And if that doesn't affect their revenue going forward, it will be difficult to tell group to invest in local. Because now, although you're making a lot of money locally, when it gets to group level, that impact is not seen. What happened to MTN Nigeria cost the MTN Group, a lot of money. Because for the first time, they recorded half year this year, over $500 million loss. $500 million loss before tax. That is huge. So that trend cannot be allowed to continue. And again, because of the import of telecom sector in this country, we cannot afford to have foreign investment cease because of the nosedive of the naira. So there has to be Something
I
has to
think
give.
we've seen some of the local operators actually shift from dollar-denominated debt, trying to move it to local currency. That should help somewhat.
It will help. The challenge is a lot of our technology is imported. That's the challenge. So software is being paid for in foreign currency. The radios, the antennas, the data centers, the servers, all are being paid for in foreign currency. So when you get local debt, how does that support you when a major part of infrastructure is still being imported? That is the challenge. Dangote, for example, helps because now petrol is local, right? But software is not local. So unless we have a thriving local tech ecosystem that can support these telcos, that might not be the solution.
Are we moving in that direction at all?
Gradually,
we have homegrown software.
Gradually, we're going there. Recently, I think Sterling Bank, was the first bank in the country that moved its core banking system to the local system by a local provider, local entity in Nigeria. So we're seeing that gradual shift because if the dollar continues at this rate, a lot of things will be impacted. Not just telecoms, a lot of sectors. So we have to start thinking how we can have capacity locally to build our technology like India, like China, not just depend on what the US is doing or the UK are doing. So that is something that has to be, it's inevitable, has to happen.
Right. And talking about, homegrown technology at this point, we did have that issue, last week, one of the top banks, the app, it wasn't working for a lot of its customers. We were seeing complaints all over, social media. So we're seeing that impact, when it comes to, tech, in the country and, having some of our talents, actually leaving the country, due to the Jaguar syndrome. We're seeing that really impacting, when it comes to most of these apps. Now, a lot of people rely, on this banking app. So how are you seeing the situation so far? I know you did comment on it.
Yes. I think Central Bank's problem was largely project management. My opinion, project management. They wanted to move core applications from one provider to another, and that takes a process. A lot of things have to go involved because you don't want to have a bank account owner who used to have 1 billion naira, then you moved him, and the next day is owning 5,000 naira. That is a problem. You don't want to have somebody owning 5,000 naira and after migrating has $5,000. That kind of thing needs to be managed properly, and it takes a while. Human is involved, technology is involved, connectivity is involved. So I think, my opinion, they didn't manage it properly to make that shift. But all in all, I believe that talent is growing in the country in that tech space. This generation is big on tech because of the global opportunity that we're seeing, work from home. So we're beginning to see that rise in local talent for tech to build apps that can be paid for local currency rather than depending on what is happening in other places across the world.
Right, and for me, anything that boosts our local currency, I'm up for that, at this point. But let's go back to this whole tariff increase issue. We know there's an international ISP, as an internet service provider, operating in Nigeria, and they've increased their tariffs by about 90-something%. But we still have the local operators here
who are being told
to hold on. Don't increase tariffs yet. Nigerians are going through a lot. Let's find other ways. But how are you seeing this move here by an international service provider able to raise tariffs?
That's what I'm saying, that the government needs to sit down with these operators, because the reason why the international guy did what he did was because of the Forex issue. At the end of the day, it's dollar value against naira. They don't care about your currency. They care about their revenue. So if MTN, Airtel is reporting in their global currency too, it matters what they are bringing out from Nigeria. Again, the implication is that investment comes still in dollars to the country, and you don't want to bring that in and you're putting out ROI is very weak. So the government needs to, I say it's a when, but the if. They have to be allowed to increase tariffs in such a way that both parties can be happy. The consumer, the regulator, the providers, etc. All the operators we have in the country, the vendors, Huawei, Ericsson, Nokia, Cisco, they all sell in dollars to these guys. So, and we are paying naira and kobo for our data mobile voice. So it's not one-to-one. It's not apples and oranges. Somebody is paying for that at the end of the day. And for now, it's the telcos paying. And how long that can happen, and I'm not sure.
And looking at this international, ISP, at this point, this increase, 98% is quite big. I'm guessing the consumers might be shifting from that. What do you think? Or is the service that good?
It depends. The service is
it that good that you stay with a 98%?
It depends. It's a conundrum. The local guys are having quality of service issues. Month on month in Nigeria, for example, there are about 1,000 fiber cuts, impacting 500 network breaches every month in Nigeria. That is big for a business, for a bank, for an oil and gas company. That is big. We're talking about 5G, we're talking about AI, cloud computing, fintech, betting. That kind of level of trouble per month is huge. So if somebody is offering a service that is reliable or next to reliable and you're sure it's guaranteed, you want to pay for it. That's why those guys have the initiative to do that. But locally, they cannot because there's regulation here. And for them to be able to support the kind of quality of service that we need, I mean, you're streaming...
But to operate here in Nigeria as an international service provider, you have to get the license here, right? So you're under the license?
But no, they're not the same license.
Oh.
It's not the same license.
Okay.
So there are different provisions. Yes. These ones have a different provision than the one we're talking about. Yes. So that separates them. But I get your point, and that's why the local players are neck and neck with the government about a sit-down to revisit this issue. Because, again, it's a win. Because if MTN Nigeria keeps declining revenue-wise at the group level, it means they keep dropping in priority at the group level in terms of investment. You don't want to have it whereby MTN Ghana, MTN Rwanda at group level is producing more than MTN Nigeria. So when the group wants to decide where to invest into, Nigeria drops in the pecking order. And we don't want to have what happened to Etisalat happen in Nigeria, where people leave and they leave the telco locally struggling, because we want to protect the telecom industry, because it's a bedrock for a lot of other industries in the country. Nollywood, for example, now is almost sitting on the telecom industry. YouTube, so content creation, YouTube, social media, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram. There's a lot of informal selling on Instagram and WhatsApp that is not captured in our data. Those are industries building gradually on telecoms. So if telecoms crashes, you can imagine the cascading effect across all of the industries. So we have to protect.
And, looking at a country like Zimbabwe, too, we're seeing the government there talking about paying their civil servants in US dollar because the ZIG, which they believed in a lot, is not, living up to expectations. So it seems this currency problem is becoming an Africa thing, at this point. And I'm wondering, are African governments taking currency serious, enough, at this point? Because we're seeing how it's impacting most of these companies that are operating, mostly in Africa at this point. So, for you, what do you think is the way forward with this currency conundrum?
We have to go back to basics, education, skill, local skill. The more you import, the more whatever happens in America impacts you. So it's just basic. If you depend on US dollar for everything, there's a reason why China and Russia are doing something together right now to eliminate that impact of US dollar for their economies. So we also have to think as Nigerians, as Africans, how we can build our economies, local content, local skills, so that we are consuming what we are producing. We are largely a consumer economy in Africa, unfortunately. And it's catching up with us now because tech is we're being sucked into tech because the world is moving. Before we were kind of immune from that, but now we're being exposed. Because if Oracle, HP, Dell, name it, Cisco, Huawei, don't sell you radios, what happens tomorrow?
So it's time.
It's time
for Africa to produce most of these technologies.
Yes.
Always great having you on the show, Mr. Oluwole Abengu, the Research Director at Insights. Always a delight having you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Ladi. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. All right, we'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll find out how the markets are doing at intraday, local markets here, and most of the international markets that we track. That's in a moment. Just stay with us.